Two super-heavy German self-propelled tank destroyers, the Sturer Emil and Dicker Max, saw service on the Eastern Front from 1941 to 1943. The 10.5 cm gun on armored self-propelled mount was a prototype self-propelled gun used by Germany during World War II. Although it was originally designed as a bunker buster for use against the French Maginot Line defenses, following the defeat of France in 1940, it was evaluated for use as a tank destroyer on the Eastern Front. It was intended to be used against bunkers at ranges beyond which the bunker could return fire. Development by Krupp began in 1939. With the conquest of France complete, the design was without a purpose, so it was suggested that it be used as a heavy tank destroyer. Two prototypes were ordered, completed in January 1941 and demonstrated in front of Hitler on March 31, 1941. If troop trials were successful, it was estimated that series production could begin in early 1942. The SPG was built on a heavily modified Panzer IV chassis with the turret removed and an open-topped superstructure added to house the main gun. The forward glacis plate was of 50 mm face-hardened armor at 15 degrees from the vertical, while the sides were 20 mm thick. The vehicle's most curious feature was armored compartments provided in the rear of the vehicle to protect the loaders against attack from aircraft. Similarly, the ammunition bins holding 26 rounds for the main gun had thin armored covers on top. Another oddity was the fake driver's compartment on the right side of the vehicle that matched the real one projecting forward from the front superstructure on the left. For self-defense, the crew carried three 9mm machine pistols with 576 rounds of ammunition. The SPG was also colloquially known as Dicker Max or Fat Max. In the prototype vehicles, the V12 Maybach engine of the Panzer IV was replaced by a lighter inline engine. For combat trials, the two prototypes were assigned to the Anti-Tank Battalion 521 during the invasion of the Soviet Union. One accidentally caught fire and was completely destroyed by the detonation of its ammunition, but the other fought successfully until the end of 1941. It was rebuilt by Krupp during the first half of 1942 and returned to the 521st in time to participate in Case Blue, the 1942 summer offensive in Russia. It was not reported operational in reports made by the battalion in November-December 1942. A report of July 26, 1941 commented on the vehicle. This self-propelled vehicle is not sufficiently maneuverable for employment in a lead unit. The limited traverse makes it necessary to turn the entire vehicle to aim at targets. This takes considerable time when done repeatedly, especially off-road because of the heavy vehicle and weak engine. In addition, because of its armor layout, it was built for frontal use. The vehicle can be shot into from the side and rear. No specific problems have occurred with the engine or transmission. The steering brakes are overstressed. Bolts in the steering slide of one steering brake have torn out 3 times and the brake bands have had to be changed twice because the rivets were overheated. The second monster, the Sturer Emil or Stubborn Emil, was another experimental German self-propelled anti-tank gun. It was based on the Henschel VK 30.01 chassis and armed with a Rheinmetall 12.8 cm gun, which was based on the super heavy Flak 40 gun. This gun could traverse 7 degrees to each side, elevate 10 degrees, and depress -15 degrees. It carried 15 rounds for the main gun. The hulls were left over from a cancelled heavy tank program, but the hull was stretched and an extra road wheel added to its overlapped and interleaved suspension system, to accommodate the large gun, which was mounted on a pedestal ahead of the engine. A large, open-topped fighting compartment, much like that fitted to the Hummel self-propelled howitzer, was built where the turret was intended to go in the original design. The vehicle remained in this embryonic state into July of 1941. Then it was estimated that the prototypes would be ready in August-September, but that was also wrong. The chassis of the pilot tanks were converted into training tanks. It was already clear by late 1941 that the purpose of the SPG would change. The Germans began receiving information regarding the production of super heavy tanks in the Soviet Union. It is not known if these were echoes of the very real KV-3, KV-4, and KV-5. The Germans were also impressed by their encounters with the KV-1 and KV-2. It is not surprising that bunker busters were reclassified into tank destroyers. This happened in the spring of 1941, when 2 of them were included into the 521st Tank Destroy Battalion. The results of their use were mixed. On one hand, the firepower of the SPG was great. On the other hand, the vehicles were very slow. Additionally, its ability to penetrate the armor of the KV-1 was never confirmed, as the vehicles were evacuated from the battlefield in both cases by Soviet repair crews. As a result, the SPG was never put into mass production, but the surviving SPGs was not removed from service either. They were sent back for refurbishment in the spring of 1942. There is little information on the combat use of them. However, the name they received in combat is well known: Sturer Emil or Stubborn Emil. The name Sturer Emil applied to this type of SPG as a whole. Each vehicle had its own name. According to the report of the commander of the 521st Tank Destroyer Battalion, the first vehicle was called Max and the second Moritz, after the mischievous characters. Suffice it to say that their adventures ended poorly. As of July of 1942, the 521st Tank Destroyer Battalion included 2 companies of Marder 3 and a platoon of heavy tank destroyers in the 2nd Company. The heavy tank destroyers were to be used against medium and heavy tanks, while the Marders dealt with infantry and light tanks. The low speed of the heavy SPGs meant that they had to fire from large distances. Max quickly started showing engine trouble, so most of the work fell to Moritz. Moritz's crew attained impressive results during the fighting in July. The number of confirmed kills is not known, but one photo shows 31 kill markings on the barrel. According to existing information, the gun was used from 800-1500 meters. Moritz's main opponents were T-34 and KV-1 tanks. Max didn't sit idle. His barrel showed kill marks too, but not as many. In general, the tactic of using these vehicles for long-range shooting paid off. Nevertheless, the soldiers did not like the heavy tank destroyers too much. First, their ammunition capacity was too low. Second, the suspension was overloaded, especially in the rear. As a result, they had to be repaired frequently, often in the field. Intensive use made its mark on the vehicles, especially Moritz. The rear was overloaded, which led to rapid wear on the road wheels. As a result, a pair of spare road wheels often found itself in place of the false driver's cabin. Lots of other items were usually stored on top. The number of boxes varied from 1 to 4. The 521st Tank Destroyer Battalion remained in the 6th Army through the fall-winter of 1942. Sadly, the information on the combat performance of the Emils is sparse, and no photos are known. It is only known that both vehicles were a part of the battalion on November 12 and were fighting near Stalingrad. As of December 1, only one vehicle was listed in the battalion. Presumably, Max had been lost by then. The 521st Battalion ceased to exist in January of 1943, sharing the fate of the 6th Army. Moritz, which the Germans abandoned along with the other vehicles of the 521st Battalion, fell into the hands of the Red Army. It was captured near a village, which was northwest of Stalingrad. At the moment of its capture, Moritz was undergoing repairs, and there were several wheels missing from the right side. Interestingly, the number of victory marks on the barrel was reduced to 7. Perhaps it has to do with a change in crews. The SPG was delivered to the proving grounds in Kubinka. Due to a lack of components, mobility trials were skipped, as were gunnery trials. A brief description was composed in March of 1943, which was very precise. The description was composed using information from prisoners of war, which pointed out that the SPG was used in a special unit. This unit was tasked with fighting Soviet medium and heavy tanks from long range. The prisoners also said that firing on mobile vehicles from the heavy SPGs was difficult. After the vehicle was studied, it was sent to an exhibition of captured armament in Gorky Park. It remained there for quite some time. The captured SPG attracted the attention of American soldiers. They asked to take the vehicle for study, but the request was denied. The vehicle was not a secret, but this was the only sample in Soviet hands. Unlike many vehicles from that exhibition, which were scrapped in 1948, this vehicle escaped that fate. The SPG returned to Kubinka, where all of its components were removed and sent for study. The SPG was placed on display. Today, it can be seen on display in the Kubinka Tank Museum, a part of Patriot Park. Perhaps the vehicle will later be moved to the park's main display area. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and to make sure you don't miss my future work, please make sure you are subscribed to my channel and press the bell notification button. Thank you, and see you in the next video.